Raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, sweet. So yeah, this is not going to be super formal. I just want to, honestly, I just want to engage in a very real conversation about mental health and talk about what this looks like today in terms of the athletes that you guys are coaching. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I kind of just want to open it up to engage and hear a little bit about what you're seeing from your athletes, and I'll do the best that I can to be of service in terms of letting you know how to better support some of these guys and women that you're involved with. Um, so listen, like, this is not what I imagined that I'd be doing with my life at this point. I didn't think that, today on my 1 year sobriety date that I'd be having a conversation, with coaches about mental health. This is not how I imagined my life. This time last year, I was playing professional basketball overseas. And on the outside, it looked like I was living my dream, traveling the world and playing basketball. But the reality was just so different. Um, Honestly, I was just exhausted, and things kind of came to a head, and I just didn't want to live anymore, honestly, um, because of all the things that I've been carrying throughout my career up until this point. I am a kid I come from Nashville, New Hampshire. I'm one of 11 siblings, like super, super big family, really dysfunctional family. And, when I was in fifth grade, I made a decision that I'm going to go to the NBA. I made a decision that I'm going to go to Syracuse. I'm going to get to the NBA. I'm going to make $1 million, and I'm going to take care of my family. Um, so from that point on, I woke up every single day at 5:30 in the morning and started training. And, by the time I was in eighth grade, I received my first Division I scholarship offer. At this time, like, for someone like me who wasn't super secure with themselves, this, people treat you different when you have early success with things. People treat you different when they see that you're talented. And for when you're not secure with yourself, you see this type of attention, and you think that people only respect you, only like you because you're good at something. And it started to shape the lens in which I saw the world. I thought that, the only way to get people's respect was through this game, and it really made me double down on everything that I had been doing up until this point. So now, um at this time, I'm bouncing around, living with different coaches, living, from couch to couch. And I just, I knew that I wanted more for myself. And I just worked, like, I just worked my ass off. And, I was blessed enough to get a scholarship to a prep school called Cushing Academy. And this school, granted me everything that I needed at that point in my life. It was all of the stability that I needed because, you get 3 meals a day, you get to live on campus. I didn't have to worry about anything outside of just playing basketball. And, that's where my career really started to flourish. I became one of the top 10 point guards in the country at this school. And, in my mind, I'm one more, one step away, two steps away at this point, right? I still got to go to college, but I believed that I was on the right track. I didn't realize that I was running away from the life that I was living and chasing a new life. But that's what was going on for me. I decided to commit to my dream school of Syracuse. And, I get to campus, and I'm now projected National Freshman of the Year, one of 15 players on this list. And, it just felt too good to be true because I wasn't secure with myself. I didn't think that I belonged on this type of stage, kid from Nashville, New Hampshire, small city. Like, opportunities like this don't come by every day. Um, so, everything's good until it's not. I came in. I remember, like, my first exhibition game. I had the perfect game. Didn't miss a shot. 20 points. Started. It was great. And then, the first regular season game opened, and it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same. Like everything was good until it wasn't. I remember like it was yesterday. I came down and I missed my first shot. And this was the first time that I realized that like 35,000 people are watching me right now. And this was the first time I realized that like I'm live on national television. And when I make mistakes, that people are paying attention to this. And I couldn't bounce back. I remember, the next possession I came down and I tried to pass it to one of my teammates, Trevor Cooney, and somebody tipped the ball out of bounds. And then, next possession, I'm like, okay, I got to score. I just had 2 bad plays in a row. I got to make up for this. I get the ball, drive down the middle of the lane, and I tell myself I'm going to try to dunk on somebody because, in my brain, at this age, I'm like, okay, if I can make a big play, I'm going to make sure, everybody forgets about the last 2-3 possessions where I just messed up. I do that offensive foul. At this level, you don't really get away with making 3 bad mistakes in a row. So I get subbed out, and as I'm walking to the bench, like there's a camera and it's following me the entire time. And this was like the first time where I started to like ask myself, like, I wonder if like everybody at home watching me on national television can hear the thoughts that are going on in my head. It was the first time that I just felt really, really uncomfortable in my skin. This camera was following me the entire time. I'm sitting on the bench and I'm like, get this camera out of my face. Like, what's going on here? I decide that it's too much for me at this point. This camera staring at me. So I tell my coach I gotta go to the bathroom. So I run to the back of the locker room and I'm having this conversation with myself while I'm in the bathroom. And I'm telling myself, like, Kaleb, like if we can go back out there and we can turn this thing around, people are gonna think that, you're mentally tough. People are gonna think that you're resilient. People are gonna think that you have the it factor. And I pumped myself up enough to believe it. I walk back out there and I say, Coach, put me in the game. He subbed me back in. I go back out there and I just couldn't bounce back. The more I fought, the more I tried, it was like I was sinking in quicksand. I just couldn't get out of my own way. And ultimately, this was the beginning of a very, very unhealthy relationship with myself, with the game. And I remember going home that night and going on Twitter and reading what everybody was saying about me. And it wasn't good. Like these people are killing me. And the amount of shame and guilt that I had felt at this point in my life for the first time, like it just completely overtook me to the point where I just made a decision, like I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving my bedroom. I'm not leaving my apartment until I have the next opportunity to prove myself to my peers, to my teammates, to the world. So next game day, I go back out there and I just wasn't the same guy. Like I just wasn't the same guy who, all high school was, top 10 point guard in the country. I always had this like, this like fake arrogance about me. I could pretend like like I believed in myself. I could pretend like I had like a real sense of confidence, but I couldn't shake this feeling. Everywhere I went, I felt paranoid because, I thought people were talking about me, and they were. I stopped going to class at this point, because when I went to class, I'd see my classmates and they'd be the same people who were tweeting about me and they'd be taking pictures of me and laughing. And I just felt so much shame of who I was. And not only that, it was, it was all the things that I was carrying from the time I was in 5th grade, right? Like the reason I wanted to go to the NBA, the reason I wanted to go to Syracuse was because I thought this was going to help me take care of my mom. I thought this was going to help me take care of my family. And I was just, it was too much for me. It was just too much. And at this point, the conversation surrounding mental health, it's not one that people are engaging in. It's just, this, nobody really knows what's going on. They're just like, what happened to the kid that we recruited? Like, who is this in front of us? Like, how did we miss this big? And I felt that. I just felt it. And I just didn't have the tools to manage it. I didn't have the tools to manage the intrusive thoughts. And from, at that point, now where the season is just so long, you know? So the entire time it was just like emotional roller coaster, up and down, up and down. When I played good, you know, I felt like the man. I wanted everybody on campus to see me. I wanted everybody to know that I did this, I achieved this. You know, I'm the one from Nashua, New Hampshire, who, you know, everybody's paying attention to now. But when I didn't play well, that shame came back, and it was really hard to shake it off of me. So in the matter of, you know, 6 months, I went from projected National Freshman of the Year to Sports Illustrated top 10 most disappointing players. And the reality of it is, like, it wasn't, had nothing to do with my physical skill set, had nothing to do with my ability to show up and you know, to make shots. It had all to do with the things that I was telling myself and that internal dialogue that I couldn't control. Um, and when that article came out, it was confirmation of all the things that I had been telling myself every single day up until that point. Um, and that was it for the rest of my college career. Like, it was just like this up and down, up and down, up and down roller coaster. Um, Ultimately, you know, we ended up going to the Final Four my sophomore year, and, you know, mind you, like, I'm not getting off the bench at this point, right? Like, it's very rare that you come in to college with this much hype around you, and then, you know, in the matter of a year, you can't get off the bench. Um, and mind you, we're on a Final Four run at this point, and, you know, I this is something I had dreamed of my entire career, but it just wasn't. It just didn't match up. Um, I ended up deciding to transfer schools and going to Creighton University. And this is, you know, at this point, when you transfer, you have to sit out a year in redshirt. And this was the best thing, you know, possible for me, because it allowed me to, you know, just get out of the limelight a little bit, be on the background and just work on myself. Um, and I started taking these courses called Healthy Lifestyle Management and Emotional Intelligence. And these courses were like, they were like the puzzle pieces I needed to put my life together and to make sense of what was going on. You know, so after that redshirt year, now the conversation's going from, you know, top 10 most disappointing players to top 10 impact transfers. And I was so focused. I felt so ready. I felt healthier than I ever did, mentally, emotionally. I just felt like I had a real sense of myself. And then 2 weeks before the season, I tear my hamstring, because I told myself all offseason I'm going to win in every drill. I told myself all offseason I'm not going to lose in any scrimmages. And, you know, we were doing this conditioning drill out on the turf, and, you know, we're doing the sprints, and our strength and conditioning coach had this rule where if you bend down, touch your knees, then you got to start over. And we had finally we finished. We got all the way to the locker room. Somebody touched their knees. We walked back out, and, you know, we have to start over, because I made a decision that I was going to win every drill. I'm booking it. Like, I'm sprinting, get to the 30-yard line, and I'm done. Like, my hamstring is completely torn. And this was, you know, now I'm back on this ride, where I don't feel good enough. I'm wondering what is all this work that I've been doing? What is it for? And this was it. Like, this was the same thing. The voice came back, and I couldn't run from myself. Um, and that is ultimately why, you know, this time last year, I was done. Like, I didn't want to do it anymore. I was only, my love for the game was completely gone. I wasn't playing because it was something I enjoyed. I was playing because it was the only identity that I ever knew. I was playing because I was holding on to this idea that I could potentially take care of my family, because of when I was in fifth grade, this was the belief system that I had created for myself. And I had no idea. I didn't have the tools to walk away from that, to step into a new identity. And I was just tired. I was so tired of it. Um, I was blessed that through my basketball career, I was able to meet some really, really healthy people who also struggled with addiction in this basketball space, a guy by the name of Chris Mullin, NBA Hall of Famer, guy by the name of Chris Herron. Both of these people are single-handedly responsible for keeping me alive. After my season, I flew straight back home, and I checked into a rehab facility called Heron Wellness. And this is where my life completely changed. I was able to create some separation from the life that I was living and make way for the life that I wanted to lead. And this was the hardest thing I've ever done. And ultimately, it's the reason why I do the work that I do now. I travel the country and I have conversations with coaches, with parents, with athletes about about giving them the tools to identify, process, and manage their emotions so that it doesn't end up manifesting in unhealthy ways. I think if and this is where the conversation is gonna, where I want to kind of have a little bit of back and forth with between, some of the coaches here. I think if you look at the stats on addiction, like every single person in this room right now knows somebody who's struggling with an addiction, for a fact. Every single person in this room knows somebody who is struggling with depression and anxiety, for a fact. Every single person in this room, it's something that affects every single family, but yet nobody wants to talk about it. And if we look at the way that these kids are growing up now, and I know this firsthand because I speak to student athletes every single day, I work with them individually. Like if we look at the world that they're growing up in now with the pressure from social media, the constant comparing their lives to everything that they see on a screen, we're not setting them up for success if we're not engaging in this conversation with them. And I know that this is very, very tough because the truth of the matter is a lot of the adults, this conversation was very taboo. Like you didn't grow up in a space where you were allowed to talk about how you were feeling. If you were a man, it's, toughen up, figure it out. Like we got to figure this thing out, right? If you're a woman, then it's the same thing, especially in sports. Right. And when you look at, the stats on how this culture has affected, your generation, my generation, the generations before us, like there's just not a lot of healthy, happy people in this world as a result of that, as a result of not being able to identify, process, and manage our emotions. And what that does, it creates a gap. It creates a gap in your ability to connect with people. It creates a gap in your ability to connect with your partners, with your children. It's just the reality of what's going on in this world. And these kids are growing up now not feeling safe to fail. And if you don't feel safe to fail, you're not going to be able to grow. And I know for a fact that you guys are seeing this in some of your athletes where, they don't rise to the challenge, right? The more difficult the obstacle seems, the more they kind of shy away because they're afraid. And we have to engage in this conversation. And I'm here now having this conversation with you because I wish that somebody would have had this conversation with my coaches. I was one of the top 10 players in the country, and not one time, did any of my coaches engage in a conversation with me and let me know that it was okay that the way that I was feeling, that it was okay to feel anxious, but we have to figure out how to manage it. Not one time. I've played for Hall of Fame coaches. I was recruited by almost every school in the country. I was living in my best friend's basement, bouncing around from place to place at the age of 12 years old. And not one coach asked me a single question about how I was being raised or what was going on at home. And, I'm just gonna be honest, I'm gonna doubt, I highly doubt that, a majority of the players that you guys are coaching are gonna go play pro. The stats just don't lead me to believe that. So if we are the coaches, if we are the ones that, have these kids most of the time, then what are we doing to help them prepare for real life? Because right now, when you look at the stats on addiction, on depression, on obesity, on death, right? These are all direct correlations with our inability to manage our thoughts and these uncomfortable feelings that we are not taught how to process. The average high school student, the average high school student spends on average weekly of 37 minutes of quality time with their parents per week, 37 minutes. So what's happening is they're literally raising themselves by help of the internet. When they go to school, they have to be the best student. When they go to practice, they have to be the best student athlete. Then they go home and they have to be the best kid, right? They have to live up to the expectations of all that their parents have them. They have to live up to the projected anxiety and fear that their parents are putting on them. Like, at what point are they learning how to manage their lives? Like, where does this happen? 37 minutes of quality time per week with their family. Like, you can't do anything in 37 minutes. So we have to ask ourselves, like, what are we in this job for? What are we coaching for? Like, what are we trying to get out of this? Like, what are we trying to, like, what are we leaving these kids with? Because if we don't leave them with anything, it better be teaching them how to manage their lives, teaching them how to manage that voice in their head, because ultimately, that's going to increase or decrease their quality of life in total. So, I want to just have a very, very real conversation with you guys about what you're seeing. Like, what are you seeing with your athletes, and how is it affecting them? And I'm going to be honest, if you're not seeing it, it's not because it's not happening. It's not because, like, these kids aren't struggling. I work with these athletes every single day. I work with athletes in the NBA all the way down to middle school. I work with athletes at the highest level. And you wouldn't believe the things that I hear from these kids. You wouldn't believe it. So, right now I kind of want to open it up, and I just want to talk, right? Like, this is not a formal, like, I'm not here to talk at you. Like, we're here to have a conversation together, because this is a very, very real conversation that needs to happen. It's uncomfortable, it's confronting, but it's real. Because, like I said, every single person in this room knows somebody who struggled with anxiety, knows somebody who struggles with depression, knows somebody who struggles with addiction, knows somebody who's eating their feelings away every day and doesn't know how to help themselves. We all know this. We all know these people. And honestly, some of these people are in this room. I'm one of them. There's no shame in it. There's no shame in it. This conversation is it's not happening. But it's going to happen here today. I've vowed to dedicate my life to engaging in this conversation at every level. And if we are going to help these kids, we ask these kids to take accountability and do difficult things and engage in uncomfortable conversation every single day. It's time for us to, start leading by example. So, let's begin. Somebody, be brave and tell me what you're seeing. I see Nicole.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So sometimes I will see some stuff. I mean, I've had a girl who, it was very obvious that her entire identity was, how she did in this particular sport. And we had a conversation about it once. And she was, willing to open up just a little bit. And, I was thinking, okay, so how do I create, as a coach for anybody on the team, a sense of, there being a safe space for, to talk about this stuff? What would you have done? I mean, what would you have liked to have seen a coach do for you? Not do for you, but I mean, would you have liked for a coach to approach you and say, hey, what's up, what's going on? And if that's something you would have liked, what would you like to have seen? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think, honestly, unless unless that rapport is there, it's not happening. Like, the kids aren't engaging. Like, we ask kids every day, how you doing? Unless they know that you genuinely care about who they are as a person, they're not opening up. It's not happening. So I think that the best thing that you can do is show them that you value them on a human level first. Right? Like, part of, like, my shirt, like, person over player, like, this is something I wholeheartedly believe. Like, they need to know that you value them as a person more than you care about anything that they can do for you on the field, on the court. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And it's little things like asking them, how are you doing? And then when they say, good, good, no. How are you doing? Like, talk to me. What's going on in your life? Like, what? I'm not naive. You know, I've played at the highest level. I'm not naive to think that, you know, you guys are only with these kids for X amount of time per day, right? Like, you're not going to change anybody's lives in, you know, 1 hour a day. But initiating the conversation, and just challenging their limiting belief system that forces them to think that the only thing that these adults care about me for is the things that I can bring to the table, this transactional relationship, right? Challenging that belief system will go a very, very long way. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I'm sorry, I don't mean to just cut in, but I'm Kaleb Joseph from Katy ISD, and I think that the fear of failure. I think a lot of our athletes, they fear, what if I don't do well? You know, I had a conversation this past Father's Day with an athlete who's at a very high-powered school, football, and he's going to be in a position to be seen, and in everything he does, well or not, it's highlighted, like you said, on a very high stage. You know, you talk about ESPN, and we're just talking, and he called me, and I was very appreciative because, you know, he could easily be out there getting his NIL deals and kind of things, but I think what we do really well is really getting to know the athlete for themselves, and not, you take away the helmet, you take away the jersey, you take away all those things, and who is that athlete without football or basketball, and know him for him. And I think for that, because we all go through pressure moments, you know, we all go through moments where, you know, do I want to be that last one to take that shot or not? And teaching our athletes that it's okay to learn from your mistakes. It is okay. But I think what you were saying earlier is just being real, and being really to the point of who are without football. You know, I'm a recruiting coordinator, so I do a lot with athletes and getting them to understand, you know, Nick Saban comes to the office, you know, yes, they want to see you perform on that field, but let's show them who you are outside of football. Because like you said, most of us are not going to play on Sundays. And so what are you going to do after that? And so really diving down to the core of who you are, and building that rapport and that relationship is key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said. I think it's important to recognize that while that may be the obvious thing, right? Like, figure out who you are as a person before you do, you know, who are you without the helmet? I think you have to recognize that this is completely countercultural to the environment that these kids are growing up in. It goes against everything that they believe. You know, think about yourself when you were in high school, right? Like, it's very hard to think long term, to think about, okay, how is the lifestyle that I'm living now going to help me or hurt me when this game is finished, right? Like, it's very, very hard for these kids to do. My suggestion, very, very strong suggestion, is while you are coaching them, it's important to not only tell them, hey, you know, think about how this is affecting you, or think about, you know, who you are outside of the helmet, but put them in position that challenges their limiting belief system, and make, like, I wholeheartedly believe that sports are a microcosm of life, right? If you're paying attention, you'll be able to connect the dots, but you're not going to learn the lessons if somebody's not there helping you connect the dots, right? That's our jobs as coaches. That's your job as coaches, to help connect the dots and say, okay, like, the things that you struggle with on the court, or the things that you struggle with on the field, we have to ask ourselves, why are we struggling with this, right? Like, one thing I tell all of my parents, all of the athletes, right? Use your sport as a mirror to reflect on who you are as a person, and allow it to mold you into the person that you are called to be. use your sport as a mirror to reflect on who you are as a person and allow it to mold you into the person you are to be. Meaning that this game, whatever sport you're playing, it will test you. It will teach you accountability. It will teach you how to have difficult conversations. It will teach you how to show up every day, put in all the work, and still feel undervalued. Like all of these things that translate to life. But if you're not connecting those dots and able to see that, then the worst things that happens is an athlete, finishes their career and they feel like, what the hell, how am I going to be successful in this world? You developed all the tools while you were playing. You just aren't able to connect the dots. And it's your job as coaches to help these players connect the dots, see how the things that they're doing right now are much greater than wins and losses, X's and O's, and see how they translate to your regular life. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Emma.
Hi, thank you. I just want to try to put it all in perspective here a little bit. So I'm a head coach of a girls program in northern Minnesota, super little school. It's actually my alma mater. For the first time in school history, when I was a senior, we made it to state. So we had built this successful program, and then, when you graduate and that level of intensity in that program is kind of dissipates, it became a broken program all over again. And so now I have the honor of going back and kind of coaching and trying to bring that full circle. And, it's my third year being head coach. The first year was super rough. We had girls who eating disorders. I had one girl who tried to drive her car into a tree. I had another list of girls who were self-harming and then, not wanting to talk about it. And just letting you all in, I'm a little nervous, letting you all into my circle a little bit here. Through my high school career, I was a star athlete for a super small school, and then I played Division III, had some health issues, had to transfer, ended up playing JUCO college. In high school, I was homecoming queen. I was successful, grades, had the boyfriend, all that stuff. In my early 20s, I decided to try and take my own life. So I myself am a suicide survivor, and just trying to translate from not having sports or having sports to not having sports to what am I going to do now, right? So going full circle through all of that. Well, now coming back, being a head coach and seeing these kids go through some of those similar things, but then you throw in that social media and it's like, how can I break through and get them to talk to me? I'm here to teach you basketball and elevate your game as an individual and as a team, but I'm also here to make you a great person. And so, I found that I had to be super vulnerable, and even though it was terrifying and scary, I had to share with my girls. Like, I don't need to share the details, right? But I have had to look them all in the face and say, no matter what it is, I guarantee you I've been through it. Abusive relationship, parent who doesn't want to listen, not thinking I'm good enough, not wanting to eat too much. Like, I have been there. So then in that second season, I ended up having girls come to me. One thought she was pregnant. One didn't want to go home. So then it's like all of these other things. You start tapping into the school and saying, okay, what resources do we have? Let's give these kids the tools to be able to rise above these challenges. And how can we do that? Are we doing that? And if we're not, like, we need to fix it now, And so I found through my journey, I had to be vulnerable. I had to be scared for a moment to just humanize myself at that level with these kids and not be so intimidating. This strong, independent woman who's my coach, like, I don't want to talk to her. She scares me to, okay, maybe I don't want to talk to my mom, but I know I can call coach,
I made everything.
I know it's scary. I'm scared to share that, but honestly, like, that is my story. And I'm finding that through coaching, I can bring this all full circle and create change with these kids. And yet I hope to be great one day again and have that successful program. Of course I do, but just seeing how broken things are, it's mind blowing to me. Some of the things that these kids, I'm like, we never thought about that. Like, we showed up to the gym, we wanted to play basketball. Like, we lived, eat, and slept for basketball. Like, never thought about this other stuff. But then in my college years and early adult years, that's when, what they're experiencing now is what I was experiencing. So anyways, that's kind of what I've learned how to break through to these kids and get them to open up and talk is just sharing and being yourself.
You're 100% right. And this is something that I travel the country. I'm speaking to parents, coaches, athletes every day of the week. And our country is suffering from a vulnerability deficit, because the reality is, like, when you're not taught, right? So like most people on the screen, like, we can all acknowledge that, talking about what was going on for us personally was not a part of the equation growing up. Right. And what that does is it forces you to believe that it's not okay for me to show up in the world this way. Right. Because if it's something that you have to hide and it's something that you're not supposed to talk about, then it must not be okay. And then you just become conditioned to believing that that is true. And then because you believe that that is true, you lack the tools and the ability to actually have the difficult conversation and tell the truth about what's actually going on, because you convince yourself that the way you're feeling isn't really what you're feeling. And you just start to slowly numb your way through life, because if you can numb it, then the feelings aren't as intense. And again, that's the direct correlation with addiction, depression, anxiety, obesity, debt. Like, that's what we're seeing. These kids are growing up in a space where every single room that they go into, the adults are pretending like they have their shit together and pretending like they have all the answers and pretending like they never struggled with the things that these kids are struggling with. Because the adults are so used to wearing this mask that they forget that it's just a mask and it's not real. So what it does is it makes these kids feel isolated on an island, and they think that, oh my God, there's something wrong with me even more. No. Like, your reaction to the environment that you're in is 100% appropriate. Like, it's 100% appropriate. We need more adults leading with telling the truth, right? Like, if I don't come on this screen and just lay all my shit out there for everybody to see and identify with, we're not engaging in this conversation. Like you're not sharing, Emma, you're not sharing your story, right? Like, other people aren't nodding their head and saying, yes, me too, right? Like, that's just how the world works. It feels like liberating to be able to tell the truth about what's going on, even if it's just for 20 minutes, right? So as coaches, you don't have to, go out and tell them you're like all of the, like, the inner workings of your trauma, but lead with vulnerability, right? Like, sports require a certain level of vulnerability. Like, if you're going to take the last shot, you have to be okay with missing. That is one of the most vulnerable things that you can do. Put yourself out there knowing that you may fail in front of your entire school, which is probably the scariest thing for any of these kids right now. But that takes a level of vulnerability. And we wonder why these kids shy away from these challenges, because they don't know how to be vulnerable, because the adults in their lives don't know how to do it. Nobody's practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
Bill.
Hey, everybody. First, Kaleb, thanks for doing this. Emma, thanks for sharing your story. I'm a 30-year plus coach. I currently coach at Keene State College. But I'm also a leadership expert, credentialed as such. And I wanted to just share, like, this is so good. And you guys are hitting all the key areas, but I thought it would be a good idea just to share a few ways in my viewpoint of how we can, how we can make this happen. How do we bring this message that we're available to our athletes, or even our other, our colleagues, to be this resource of support? Like, how does that happen? I served in the military for 23 years and did a combat tour. One thing that was critically essential was that I was able to gain genuine human connection. And this is the same way as a coach. In order to build these relationships that are so critical between coaches and athletes, we have to build genuine human relations, a genuine human connection. Well, how does that happen? We touched base on it already in our conversations about being vulnerable, right? Someone, I think it was Jamie, who said we need to ask open-ended questions, start a conversation rolling. This is all true. And one thing that we have to do is build this mindset into our culture, This is part of our program. This is an expectation and not an exception, that, you know, we are constantly here for you, but still we have to gain that connection and that trust. How does that happen? First, we take care of our people. We take care of them with the most basic needs that they require, whether it's extra time for their homework, whether it is a safe space to do their homework, whether it's a snack after, you know, in between classes in practice, or even, you know, make sure that they're hydrated. Some of the most basic things that we might take for granted, they might need, and they start to realize that, wow, this person actually cares about me. They're providing me with whatever I need to succeed at the most basic level, right? So with that starts to open and loosen things up. Yes, then we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And how does that happen? Lots of times we have to realize this is a two-way street between us, that if we want them to talk to us, we have to allow ourselves to talk to them. And sometimes we have to share some of our stories, like Emma did. That's a perfect example. She shared some of her afflictions, and the kids could, they could relate to that. And now people are starting to, now you're starting to walk in the same journey. When you start walking in the same journey, you become connected, right? And that's all because you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. And, and I've gone through my own afflictions, and I'm not afraid to share them, or the lessons I've learned when I was at wartime, to share how that relates to, real life now, and how we can overcome the challenges that we've overcome. Now you start walking together, we have to meet our athletes where they're at. Like, it's not about us, hey, tell me what is going on, what's bothering you. We have to allow them to open up, and then or find that opportunity for us to meet them where they're at. And that means to come in with listening ears, right? And then ask those open-ended questions to them, as you can open up and find that common ground for discussion. Then again, that's another place where you can meet, move forward, right? And with that, and I think sharing life experiences is also very relatable to each other. And as you do that and you build this trust, I just think that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Those are just simple ways that you can have genuine connections with your athletes. And you're going to find that it's not just in accordance with getting them to open up to you when they have issues, but it also will strengthen their confidence, and their performance will grow too.
100%. I think it's important, more than anything, that we as adults recognize our own shortcomings, right? Like, this is like really, really hard to do, to like be honest with yourself, to be able to self-reflect and, be vulnerable, right? Because at the end of the day, like, there's nothing worse than somebody who thinks that they're helping you by relating with you. And it's like every time you say every time somebody comes to you with an issue, then the next thing you do is invalidate their experience by being, oh yeah, well, but I went through that too. And for me, when I was doing this, like nobody, we don't even like friends who do that, right? Never mind, somebody who's 20, 30 years older than you, trying to you recognize that like the world that they're growing up in, most of you guys know nothing about. It's important, like, don't ask these kids to do anything that you're not comfortable doing yourself. And when you do these things, like, it's okay to like fail in front of them. It's okay to struggle in front of them. There are days where you guys go to practice and you're just overwhelmed, right? Let them see you, explain to them that this is what's going on for you, and go through it with them. Let them see firsthand how to navigate all of the heavy emotions, all of the dark emotions, all of the fears, right? Like, there's pressure on you guys just as well as on these kids. Like, that's just the reality. Like, you guys wouldn't believe, like, through this Heron Wellness rehab facility, I'm on recovery meetings every single day with Hall of Fame coaches that recruited me every single level, high school, college, professional. Like, you wouldn't believe it. These coaches, like, you guys are under just as much stress and anxiety as well. I think it's about leading by example. And, sometimes you got to take that coaching hat off and think like, I think it's very easy for coaches to think that, I'm the guy, wearing this coaching hat, and you guys got to listen to me. So we're always giving advice. And like, sometimes we just got to shut up and listen. You guys understand what I'm saying? I will take 2 more questions, and then I want to wrap things up with you guys. William.
Yeah, hey, I coach middle school cross country and track. And kind of like a lot of people, I've been at a level where I didn't do middle school cross and track myself. I did it in high school. I did it collegiately. I did it, when I got done college, I did a little post collegiately. So I kind of resonate with the mental and anxiety and depressive aspects that come with it, that kind of can push you up, but it can bring you down. And unfortunately, I'm kind of seeing some of the younger kids that I coach at like the junior high age kind of going through the same mental, like pushing themselves really hard. And for me, I've seen, this is going to be probably my 7th year coaching middle at like the junior high level. And I feel like it's really difficult to speak to the athlete, as like themselves, like, hey, I see you're struggling with this anxiety of you wanting to do really, really well. Like, for example, I had a girl waiting for a race, getting ready for a race, and then while sitting on the bench getting ready, she just starts crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? She's like, I don't want to fail. And I'm like, it's okay to fail. Like, if you run well, as long as you try, if you go big and you fail, at least you went for the goal and went big. I was like, that's okay. I was like, and like, but I feel like the precursor to these feelings is because she is a high competitive, like she does soccer, she does volleyball, she does all this thing. And I have a lot of kids I'm seeing at this age doing select sports. And I feel like maybe some of the core of it is, how is there a way to reach out to the parents? Because I feel like maybe some of these conversations need to start between at home with their athletes, but parents, like I'm a parent myself, but all we want to do is see, they just want to see the kids go for the best and be the best and be at the highest level. But it's like, when exactly do you have these parents like maybe we could tone it down a little, or like, how do you open up that conversation with either, like a parent meeting, or maybe with an athlete and parent meeting, or, is there any way that you could recommend maybe try and maybe get this as a, how I could try and reach out more, to like letting parents know, like, hey, you're doing great as a parent, as pushing your kid, but maybe we need to recognize the signs of, like, as they get older, this behavior can become problematic down the road.
For sure. This is like I know exactly what you're talking about. I speak to parents multiple times a week, and again, this comes back to this inability to identify, process, and manage your emotions and the things that are going on with you and in your life. And because it wasn't taught to the parents, now they're in a position where they're in authority, and they don't recognize, because it's coming from a place of love, that they're projecting all of their fears and anxiety onto these kids, because they want their kids to be the best, right? They want their kids to be the best version of themselves. And oftentimes, they're not comfortable with seeing their children fail, because they're internalizing their children's experiences as a reflection of who they are as a parent. And that's just no way to lead, right? Like, so much of our growth and development comes through failure and our ability to learn from it. But if we're coddling the kids and, not allowing them to fail, then it's creating an unhealthy relationship with challenges, right? So now the girl's, getting ready to prepare for a meet, and she doesn't have the ability to face that challenge head on. The parents, that's a tough conversation to have, because it's very threatening to everything that they're doing. I'm gonna give you my information because I'd love to help assist you in that conversation with your parents. When I travel to speak at these schools, I often do separate workshops. So I'll do a speaking engagement with the coaches. I'll do a separate one with the parents, and then a separate one with the student athletes, and in hopes of bridging that gap between all three, so that when I leave, everybody has a better understanding of each other's perspective in their experience. I think there's one person who wanted to say something. We don't have a ton of time. I think it was Safina.
Yes. Hi guys. I'm not gonna put my camera on, but I'm battling cancer right now. But I just wanted to come in and say that I stepped into this meeting and I think everything that was talked about is very important. Thank you so much, Kaleb, for everything that you came up with. And I believe that like today in 2022, the hardest problem we are having as coaches is the parents, because at the end of the day, we want to have these vulnerable moments with the students. We want to connect with them. But then as coaches, we are also told, like Coach earlier talked about how a student came to her and he's like, I can't go home. I had that happen to me. And as a coach, it was so hard because I couldn't take the kid home. There was nothing I could do for that child at that moment that wouldn't get out of my job description, if that makes any sense. I feel like when we went to school, we had our coaches. You had your coach was your best, when you trusted your coach was your best friend. You went to them, you told them everything that was happening at home. And nowadays it's like, well, if a student is doing that with the coach, the parents are having a hard time with that. And I love that you said, you have meetings with parents and then, students. And then I think that's a really good thing that I'm actually going to steal that from you. But like, just to close this conversation of what can we do as coaches? I believe that being vulnerable is still an option. But then how do we protect us? Because it seems like, especially male coaches, I feel like they're having a harder time connecting with the female coaches, because then, like I had a coach here, I live in Washugo, who got fired for grooming. And it was like, well, he told a student, you can call me anytime and you could talk to me anytime. And that didn't seem like something that was okay. So as coaches, that's a lot of pain that we are going through. And I'm wondering, like, how do we overcome that step? Because we do talk to our parents, we do have the parent meeting, but like, how do we overcome that? Like we are bringing the beauty to your child and not trying to separate you from your child, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, we can't save every child, right? We can't save anyone. All we can do is create an environment where we can engage and initiate conversation. We create a culture where we challenge limiting belief systems for these kids to combat some of the things that are going on at home. A lot of the work that I do with athletes is teaching them how to think for themselves and challenge their parents' limiting belief systems in a respectful way, right? You don't need to go home, and I'm not telling these kids go home and tell your parents to fuck off. Like, that's not what I'm doing, right? But teaching these kids, like, you have to be an individual. You are responsible for your own thoughts. You do not have to internalize your mom's, your dad's, your coaches, anyone else's opinion as the truth and holy grail. We need to teach kids how to be individuals, how to think for themselves, because ultimately that is the only way that they will have any chance of going out into this real world where there's pressure coming at them from all different directions, and be able to make sound decisions that they can live with for themselves. Like that's what this is about. We don't have a ton of time left in this, for this engagement, but I want to give you all my information. If any of this conversation is something that is of interest to you, or something that resonates with you, please contact me. The name of my business is the Self-Help Tour. I'm gonna put it in the chat right here. And please, please, please reach out, because I am happy to come to your school and speak to all of the student athletes in your school. I am happy to speak to all the coaches in the school. I am happy to speak to all the parents of the student athletes. This is something that I do every single day of the week. At the highest level in professional sports, all the way down to middle schools. This is a conversation that I've dedicated my life to being a part of, because I know firsthand, the effects that mental health has had on my life and people that I love. But it's also something that I'm educated in, and something that I take very, very serious. I want to help. That's why I'm here having this conversation with you guys.